We now go back to Brian Wilson. Brian?
Start up again.
Thank you very much. This is Brian Wilson along with Chris Plant with special WMAL coverage of the earthquake that we all experienced. Where were you when the earthquake of 2011 hit? You'll have stories to tell your children. Let's run through the basic information that we know right now. It was a 5.9 magnitude earthquake in Louisa County, Virginia. That's the epicenter, but it was felt all up and down the East Coast. There are reports that the President of the United States on vacation in Martha's Vineyard actually felt it on the golf course. We certainly felt it here, and there's a lot to report real quickly. Let me go through it. The Pentagon evacuated. Apparently, low rumbling building, the rumble was built and built and built to the point they said the building was shaking. People ran into the corridors of the government's biggest building as the shaking continued, shouting, "Evacuate, evacuate." The U.S. Park Service immediately evacuated and closed all National Mall monuments. And at Reagan National, ceiling tiles fell. And there was an immediate decision to put all flights on hold. Many of the federal buildings in the Washington, D.C. area have been evacuated. Many employees standing out in the parking lots, wondering whether they'll go back to work or whether they will go home. The concern, of course, is that there might be aftershocks. It was a pretty good earthquake. There could be, likely will be aftershocks, and that is the concern right now. Very quickly, let's see. There were two nuclear reactors in Virginia, not far from the earthquake. One is the Lake Anna Power Station, and the other is a Dominion-operated power plant, which is being run off emergency diesel generators. They are now offline, initially not thought to have any significant damage, but they are continuing to investigate. So Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, sort of at the moment paralyzed. If you're going home, here's a couple of things you need to think about. Everybody's being let out at approximately the same time. Traffic is going to be severe. If you take the metro home, be aware that there are restrictions, speed restrictions now in place with metro that allows you only to drive 15 miles per hour. That's going to take you a long time to get home. Patients will be advised. Cell phones are disrupted because of the volume, not because there's a problem with the cell phone systems, because so many people are trying to call loved ones to coordinate how they're going to get home, to make sure everybody at home is okay, to make sure everybody at work is okay. So one piece of advice we can give you is, if you can't get through on the phone, consider a text. This happened during 9/11, and the thing we learned there was the texts sometimes get through when the cell phone calls do not.
Also, there's this quaint technology which we call landlines.
Well, they're busy too. They're jammed up as well.
It's on this thing though, because I thought maybe you were being a little bit tongue-in-cheek when you said that the president was on the golf course.
No, I'm dead serious. He really was on the golf course, according to the Associated Press, and it was noted there they felt the earthquake. Well, this is an island off the coast, and they felt it there. In fact, there are reports of buildings swaying in Ohio. That's how far away this was felt. This was a significant earthquake.
Yeah, 5.9 is serious. That's
well-known fault, but it's unusual for the earthquakes that emanate from this fault to apparently be this severe. This is probably roughly, just figuring in the top of my head on some back-of-the-math envelope, about twice as powerful as the other known earthquakes that are associated with this particular fault.
And can it be long before we start assigning fault in Washington, D.C.? The fault game has been an ongoing thing in Washington of late, and I'm sure there will be political ramifications and aftershocks from
Washington Monument, and we're going to try to get this locked down and get the best information we can. It may indeed be tilting, and they're going to check it out to see if that is indeed the case. There is all major buildings in the city pretty much have been evacuated, including the Pentagon, the Justice Department, all of the major governmental buildings, as people stand outside and try to figure out whether it's safe to go back in. 5.9 magnitude quake, and very quickly, apparently two power plants, nuclear power plants in Virginia, are now offline, and they're checking for additional damage.
Structure handcrafted and not sewn together with steel, so it's constructed in the classic Gothic style. And three, according to the spokesman there, Richard Weinberg, three of the pinnacles, which are the sort of ornamental tips coming off of the tower. Three of the four of those have broken off the central tower at the National Cathedral. And again, highest point in Washington, D.C. I was actually close to the cathedral when the earthquake hit. It took a pretty good shock, and one of the questions I raised with my compatriots at the time is whether the cathedral might have been damaged because of the limestone construction, of the way that it's constructed, and its height. It's essentially, if you dug it out, a 30-story building from bottom to top, and constructed in the old style.
We are told that Amtrak travel is being delayed, that they're going to do the same thing that the Metro is doing until they can have absolute certainty that the rails were not damaged. The trains, as you might imagine, are going to move very slow. So if you're
Okay, so you get the idea. We had a 5.9 earthquake out here on the East Coast, and I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I've been in every large earthquake that they've had out there, at least during my life, which includes most of the big ones. And typically, what happens out there, they start off with a really high number, and then they get lower as the data is reevaluated. But nevertheless, you can see from the pictures that it was substantial, and what makes it interesting is that it's unusual to have earthquakes out here. So what does it mean to us? When we think about a lot of the things that have been happening, it's almost hard to keep track of it. I mean, things that flash through my mind are, hundreds of thousands of dead birds or dead fish floating to the surface or washing up on the beaches, thousands of birds falling out of the sky. Some of that stuff I've addressed on other videos. What do we got? The tsunami, the earthquake and tsunami in Japan, and that whole tragedy. Earthquake and tsunami in South America, on and so forth. And we've got just a lot of natural disasters, and we've got this earthquake here today. We've got a hurricane that's poised to come up the coast here on Sunday. Not unusual. I mean, getting up far north into Virginia might be unusual, but these things happen. So is it a lot to do about nothing? Is this something where that many folks will look at as absolute signs of the end of times? Absolutely. I mean, there's going to be very strong religious fundamentalists who are going to say that these are clear signs that Armageddon is upon us, and there's going to be the 2012 doomsdayers that are going to say this is clear signs that the end of the world is, the Mayans were right, the end of the calendar meant the end of the world. Folks are going to, a certain amount of folks are going to believe that Planet X or Nibiru, as it comes closer to the Earth, is responsible for these natural disasters and of course the ones that are going to follow. Now, if anybody that's watching this video doesn't know what I'm talking about, you need to get on YouTube and do a search on Planet X. If you haven't done that, you don't have to believe everything you read, but your knowledge is power, and you owe it to yourself and your loved ones to try to stay informed. Don't avoid an issue. This is just my advice, simply because it seems ridiculous to you. I'd like to, if you look at the pictures in this presentation, you can see a lot of the panic and the looks on the people's faces, the terror. These are folks that obviously didn't seem to have a plan. I mean, the whole East Coast here was it was panic, and this is what happens. This is what's going to happen. Because one thing I think we can all agree on is something's coming down the pike, one way or the other. Now, whether it's, by chance or design remains to be seen. But, there's a lot going on. These are strange times, tumultuous times, never knew how to pronounce that word. But you get my meaning. Try to have a plan. This should be a wake-up call. If you don't have a bug-out bag ready with things in your car, things that you're going to need should you be trapped on the road, if you don't have food and water supplies, you're so far behind the curve that I don't know what to say to you. The time is now to start preparing mentally and physically for some of the unknown things that are potentially going to happen. I don't necessarily believe it's the end of the world, but I think we're in for some rough times here as we go through these shifts, whatever they are, whether they're spiritual or physical, or there may not even be a difference between the two. I'll leave you with this thought, and maybe it'll help you. I have a family and a house full of kids of different ages, and we talk, and I'm not afraid to die, and I'm not afraid of the end of the world. I don't want, certainly I would hope that doesn't happen, but the end of the world is relative. I mean, today, who knows how many thousands and thousands of people throughout America and the world died in car accidents and cancer, and, surgeries that went bad, murders. It's the end of the world for people every day. So when we talk about the end of the world, we tend to look at it as a day that the world ends. But quite frankly, your world's going to end the minute you die, whether you get hit by a bus or, a 70-foot wall of water comes, washing up on your beach. So what's the point? The point is take a look around and see what's going on. Look up things like bug out and preparation. There's a guy named Southern Prepper on YouTube. If you put that in your search, you'll see that he has all kinds of things that are really valuable information, in terms of preparing for this type of stuff. But look up Planet X, look up Nibiru, look up, I'm talking about on YouTube, some of the theories that folks have, and it might help you better prepare for what may or may not happen. Anyways, that's the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay safe.
Be sure to log on to fallingawake1000.com and join the discussion on this and many other interesting and important subjects. You have been warned.